Well, as promised, we are rejoined by Mr. Talk2Q Quincy. Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks since we did the last college football. People are just going to have to suck it up listening to a car podcast about it. But now we're down to the final four teams. What are your thoughts on what we just saw with Notre Dame and Georgia, 23 to 10?
Man, first of all, thanks for having me back on. I love talking football with you. I'm shocked. I really am. It's not that I didn't think Notre Dame was capable, but to win by 2 touchdowns is something completely unexpected. They just made the plays when they needed to, and Georgia couldn't. I was stunned. Did you have any idea that Notre Dame could pull this off?
I wasn't sure, honestly, because it's the same thing I've been saying about a lot of other teams. I don't know how good they are when I watch them play against other teams because they all seem to cancel each other out. Everyone plays like a Big Ten team lately, and here we basically have 2.5 Big Ten teams out of the Final Four. But back to Oregon, remember what I said the last time? I go, I don't know how good they are. And I think they're better than what they showed this weekend, but Ohio State's been pretty consistent, and they put that beat down. And I guess I just jumped to a completely different game with you. But as far as Notre Dame, I knew they were capable, but I didn't know about this. And I thought when Kirby Smart went for it late in the first half, when there was, I think it was 3-3 at the time, maybe 6-3. On fourth down, deep in his own territory, and didn't converge, and then they gave up like 2 scores like immediately. It's going to be a long day.
Yeah, definitely. Both coaches took some chances, and it didn't quite work out in Georgia's favor. They had some very untimely mistakes, including like the guy that ran into the referee on the sideline, on their official on the sideline. Just craziness. But
dropped balls than anybody in college football.
My goodness, some wide open, easy catches. And so I just have to give Notre Dame credit. But for Riley Leonard, their quarterback, to have, I'm not even sure if he had 100 yards passing. I mean, for him to have the game that he did statistically, but he made the first downs when they needed them with his legs and everything, man. Just kudos to Marcus Freeman and what he has those guys doing, because I'm used to Notre Dame getting into the playoffs and flaming out.
Right. And I remember when they first hired him, I think the first year didn't go very well, and people, you know how they are, they wanted him out of there. So it's cool to see that kind of success. And I think going into this game with Connor Stockton, I think was his name. Mm-hmm. And of course the Florida State guys are like, well, it's a backup quarterback. Now you have to kick him out because Florida State's never going to let that live down from last year. But he played really well against Texas. And Carson Beck has been so up and down this year. I think at this point, Stockton was probably the better call. I know that sounds pretty crazy, but Carson Beck struggled big time the first time they played Texas and won, and it was really struggling the last time they played Texas and won when he got knocked out. So I wasn't really worried about that. But that defense, Georgia's got one of the best defenses in the country historically. But they've dropped the ball a lot this year as well by giving up a lot of points. Today they 23 to 10, but. Yeah, it was surprising. I mean, I'm not surprised Notre Dame won, but I'm surprised that it looked like an ass whooping.
Yeah, and then like to all the people, of course, over the last month, everyone has said Alabama deserved to be in, or maybe even a South Carolina, or all this SEC talk. The SEC has not fared well in the bowl games at all. I mean, at all. And so it's any given Saturday. I mean, these teams come to play, and they don't care what conference that you're in. And so right now, the lone representative for the SEC is ironically Texas, who just tied in, to the SEC.
Right. And they've, they haven't played well. They've made the plays when they've needed to. But like I said yesterday, when you texted me about the game, I said that game was stressing me the F out. And I was serious. I was stressing out on the couch. In overtime, when they give up that run to Levitt on 3rd and 16, and he almost scores, I just sat back on the couch and said, "What the?" and just stared at the sky. And at that point, I was almost completely spent anyway.
Yeah, I honestly thought Arizona State had that game. Why they set an all-out blitz on that 4th down play, I have no idea why they did that. And I don't know what the safety was doing. He's just looking in the backfield, just chilling. While
he was out of position.
Yeah,
it was almost as bad as Malik Mohammed, number 5, on that Cam Scatterboo 42-yard touchdown pass. Mm-hmm. I thought that was the backup safety out there, the way he was kind of running around in a big circle. I go, what is that player doing?
Yeah, he
and
couldn't track
lets
the
the guy
ball at
catch it.
all.
Yeah, let the ball just landed right in front of him, and then at that point it was a wrap. But major props to Arizona State. It was kind of weird living here in Arizona because I want them to do well. I don't want them to go down like a fluke 1-year wonder like all the other teams. But when I started thinking about it, they're in the Big 12. They won the Big 12, and it's a different Big 12 than last year, minus 2 major teams. But it's still the same competition Texas has been playing for as long as I can remember. Mm-hmm. And, when you can go 11-2 in a power conference, because that's what they always say about the other schools, right? The SMU prior to joining, and Boise, and those teams don't deserve to be there. When you can go 11-2 in a major conference, you deserve to be there. And I'm glad they played well. I wish that Texas would have beat them by a little bit more than double overtime for the sake of my health. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing. Texas had the easiest path, and the refs want Texas to win. And it's like they're in a lose-lose situation, except for the people in that locker room and the fan base, in my opinion.
I think Penn State had the easiest path, to be honest with you. Texas, Clemson is no joke. They've been there before.
Right.
Arizona State was hungry. We saw that. And Lord knows Ohio State's going to be a handful because they're playing the best right now. So, but you look at Penn State, they beat SMU handily. They beat Boise State, pretty handily. And now they get Notre Dame, when I'm pretty sure, Penn State, they may be favored. I don't know how they're going to pick that game, but that's a lot easier than playing Ohio State because Texas has their hands full.
Right. When you look at it, like I said, it's really 2.5 big teams left. So whether Ohio State plays Penn State or played Notre Dame, they play each other every year anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this Texas versus Ohio State is going to be the first time they've played, I think, since the 2008 or 2009 Fiesta Bowl with Colt McCoy and those guys, and they won basically on a walk-off touchdown with less than a minute left on a post play. But it's exciting. What are your thoughts now that things have settled on the Heisman thing? So we saw Travis Hunter in Colorado get destroyed. Unfortunately, I wish they would have played better. They picked a hell of a time to play the worst game of the season.
Yeah.
And then, we saw Ashton going up against 8 in the box all day against Penn State.
I don't know why people were coming down on Ashton on social media. People were saying, this guy's not worthy of the Heisman. He only had, 100 yards against Penn State. I'm like, do you know how hard it is to get 100 yards against Penn State? Especially when they know you're going to get the ball. They haven't given up too many 100-yard games all season. So for him to get that, to me, shows how great he is.
You're 100% right. Because when you watch the game, they were stacking it, and he had it was like almost like Barry Sanders, where there was literally nobody there to block for him. He had 2 or 3 men in the backfield every time he got the ball.
Mm-hmm. He made a lot of people miss. And he did his impersonation of Barry Sanders on some plays and Emmitt Smith on the others, as far as spinning off a contact and doing things like that. So I was still impressed by the guy. But as far as Travis Hunter and Colorado, I think Travis still put up some decent numbers, but that was just a horrible game, man. BYU they didn't care about anything. They just destroyed Colorado, and I did not see that coming whatsoever.
I don't think anybody saw that coming. That looked like Colorado last year. And I think Travis, he did really well when given the opportunity. I still have a big question mark on him at the next level because I still don't know how fast he is. I don't know if he's really a lockdown corner. And when you listen to these announcers, they overhype these players so much. Like, I swear, if I have to hear that Jhae Barron is the number 1 defensive back in the country another time, the guy from Texas, I'm going to throw something at the TV. And I'm a diehard Texas Longhorns fan. But they must just sit back and watch nothing but film all day to determine that, because he just looks like a regular college corner to me. I know he makes some plays, but there's some other guys I see around the country that make plays, like Caleb Downs and them boys. Like Caleb Downs that came from Alabama last year, and now he's on Ohio State. He's basically their big star on defense. I see him making more plays, and Travis Hunter, I don't know, on defense, he doesn't get challenged, but I'm not convinced that he's a great corner yet.
I like him better actually as a receiver. I think he tracks the ball very well as a corner. If he decides to go full time as a corner in the NFL, I would think the ceiling for him might be a Pro Bowl. But as a receiver, I guess come being a guy that can get you 1,200 yards, with a good quarterback. Because when the ball's in the air, man, he just finds a way to get to it.
I mean, that makes him a valuable corner and a nickel or a dime back as well. He's a great ball hawk. But yeah, you're right. You have good hands, they're not going to put you on defense.
Right.
You're going to be the gadget guy. You're going to be the like I think I said, like a Percy Harvin or Peter Warrick and Cordell Patterson. He's like one of those guys that just Debo Samuel, a really tiny version, but he's one of those guys that are just playmakers. So they just try to put the ball in his hands.
Utility guy. So, but hey, I do want to ask you about something before I forget. What did you think about Cam Ward sitting out the second half of that Miami game to avoid getting hurt after he got the touchdown record?
I think that was prearranged with the team, and I personally don't have a problem with it. I think I heard some people say, he quit on his team, and other people say that they don't have a problem with it. I didn't really have a problem with it because they have nothing to win in that game other than the game itself, but it means nothing. We know college football, the final game means absolutely nothing. Even if you win the national championship, you have a national championship at the beginning of the next season, you may not even be ranked preseason number one. Right. So I think it was a business decision for him, and good for him, that's fine. He's made some great passes. I can't wait to see him at the next level, but like anybody else coming out of college, I'm just a little skeptical on him as a player just because I haven't seen enough.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that before. And I know people were calling him selfish. And I mean, technically, is it selfish? Yeah, you're thinking of yourself because you want your future to be intact as far as going to the NFL. It's about as selfish as a prenup, I guess. You're just protecting yourself. So I kind of understand what the guy did. I had never seen anything like that before. I mean, if he would have continued to play, I'm pretty sure they probably could have found a way to win that game. But man, that was just something that just blew my mind at first when I saw it happen.
The way he was playing and the team was playing around him, I have no doubt that they would have won that game. And they still had an opportunity in the end without him playing in the second half. But I didn't really think anything of it at the time. But it was just me watching two teams that I don't really care that much about. I'm just watching because I love college football. But then when it came out afterwards, that's when I started kind of reflecting. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could see why people might be upset about that. And at the same time, I guess I could see why it was a business decision. But to be fair, he could have got hurt in the first half too.
Yeah, that's true.
But
And
he
all the
didn't.
people who were upset were Miami fans and gamblers. But outside of that, I don't think anyone else had a right to really be upset. But I would much rather see Miami go up against Colorado. That's the bowl game I wanted.
Yeah, that would have been good. And then, the Michael Taft targeting non-call, that's what everyone's kind of sitting on right now in the Arizona State game. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know if I told you my thoughts on that already.
No, you haven't. You haven't. But I've seen less called. So I was fully expecting them to call the targeting. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. If you're gonna make calls like that, as long as it's consistent, I don't care. But I'm really surprised they didn't call that as targeting.
Yeah, there were a lot of missed calls in the game, and I was texting back and forth with a good friend of mine who's also been on the show, but it's been a while. He's a diehard ASU guy, and he's one of those honest sports guys too. So I'm sure that he was really ticked off about it, but I think he understands. And we don't like to make excuses for our team. I think that I've seen worse hits, but at the same time, that gets called targeting 90% of the time. I hate targeting in college football. I think at least 50% of them, maybe even more, aren't actual targeting, but they call it anyway on the players. But I mean, the play with Isaiah Bond going across the middle, that gets called targeting all the time too.
Yeah.
That one could easily say that's worse just on impact. If Isaiah Bond would have laid there for a while, they probably would have thrown a delay flag. But I don't have a problem with either one of them not being called.
Yeah.
But to your point, they normally both of those are called, and that would have been on each team. I obviously have a big problem with Scatterboo's push off on the catch and the jersey being tugged of the Texas receiver. But I also have a huge problem with Bert Auburn missing 2 field goals on the Texas side. But one thing I would say about that, he is. Yeah, I've seen him miss too many big kicks. I don't care if he's the number one kicker in Texas football history. I've seen him miss way too many important kicks. And as far as the non-call on Michael Taft, I was looking at it, and that occurred at the ASU 40 something, maybe 43, 44, 45 yard line, move the ball at 15 yards. There's no guarantee because they have no kicking game. Because people say that they lost the game because of that. I'm like, I'm not too sure about that. So
yeah, they've had problems kicking all season, it appears, but I don't know. I think targeting is it definitely changes the game, especially if someone gets ejected. It
yep.
really changes the game, and I kind of wish they would just kind of back off of it. And if it's something egregious, like if the ball is not playable and you still take a shot at the guy, I'm completely okay with whatever you decide. But I mean, it's hard enough to play defense, and sometimes these guys are just trying to make a play, and there might be some incidental contact. You have to be able to differentiate between that and someone who's really trying to hurt somebody.
But yeah, I agree. A lot of the targeting, I wish they'd get rid of it. Well, not the call, but I wish they would stop ejecting the players or making them lose the next. So if you get, for people listening, if you get called for targeting in the first half, then you have to sit out the second half of the game. If you get called for targeting in the second half, then you have to sit out the first half of the next game, regardless of when it is. So if it's the last game of the season, you're sitting out the first half of the first game of the next season. And so I think it should be a 15-yard, basically an unnecessary roughness flag. And to your point, depending on what it looks like, because you can tell when someone leads with their head with the intent to hurt somebody versus just trying to make a football play. And in my opinion, actually, now that I think about it, and maybe it's because I'm a diehard Texas Longhorns fan, but I try not to be that type of guy. I feel like Michael Taft was trying to make a play. The other guy on Arizona State was trying to break up the ball, but that's one of them that they would probably, and they didn't even look at it, but that's one I could see getting called for the more egregious
I agree.
version of it. So, but yeah, I think they have to change the rules of the game because it's a little extreme. So, Texas, Ohio State, how do you like that matchup? How do you see it going? And obviously, Notre Dame and Penn State. What do you got?
Texas, Ohio State. I think Ohio State's just hitting on all cylinders right now.
They're a favorite by 6 points, and that's probably going to move as we get closer to the game.
Yeah. So I would expect Ohio State to be able to pull that one off. I mean, you never know. Things have been a lot of surprises this year. And then with Notre Dame, Penn State, man, at this point, I really feel like Notre Dame can get them because I'm not a huge fan of James Franklin as a coach for Penn State. And I think at some point he's going to put his team in jeopardy with a decision. And so I'm gonna take Notre Dame in the upset over Penn State.
So you got Notre Dame and Ohio State. Who wins that one? Or do we? It's a couple weeks away. We can get back and talk about that one once that's set too.
Well, as a Michigan fan, I'm hoping that the season gets canceled and they never play the game. But if they have to play, I'm afraid Ohio State is probably the best team in the country right now, and
They're
that they
looking like
would
it right now.
win. Yeah, regardless. Now, I think Penn State, they did give Ohio State a good run for their money early in the year, but I just think if it's Notre Dame or Penn State, Ohio State can get them. So, but God, I'd hate to see either of them win. I really would.
Well, you have to keep your eyes on Texas
fan
then.
right now. Yeah, I'm a Texas fan right now to win it all because I don't want Penn State to win it.
Texas offense has to play better. They have too many weapons. I felt like Sark was calling a conservative game, like he was maybe trying to save plays, which you can't do. No. But, you know, the thing about that game is Leavitt. Did you know Cam Scatterwood won the offensive MVP of that game?
No,
in
I
a loss.
wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
Wow.
I saw like the presentation online, which is it's cool, I guess. But Leavitt, in my opinion, is the reason why that was even a game, because there were so many times when he dropped back where he would have been dead by the fast, hard-hitting Texas defense, and his elusiveness and looking down the field and throwing dimes when he needed. I mean, obviously they lost the game, but I think Texas got tired of chasing him around, and I don't know if there's another quarterback left that can do that.
Yeah.
And that might be the difference between it's matchups, right? That might be the difference between, Texas could get boat race, but maybe not.
Hey, that's true. But I was surprised that Arch Manning didn't get in, not like
at all,
for a goal line play or short yardage play or anything. That really kind of surprised me.
Right. That's what I was wondering. Like, dude, are you saving your packages? And he only handed the ball off to Jaden Blue and Wisner. And they were doing these ugly, they weren't counters. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, what? I don't understand this play calling. That's the only reason why I can just assume with Sark being the guy. That's why we were seeing what we were seeing. Like, what are you saving yourself for?
Yeah,
but
you try to save plays, you might not get a chance to use them.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see Arch Manning. Maybe he didn't want to pull Quinn for the confidence. And again, they won at the end of the day, but Arch has a better deep ball. And there's a lot of those deep passes that were just off timing.
Yeah.
And when you got, your Isaiah Bond, and they need to get that kid number 11 the ball more. He's the one who returned that punt.
Okay. I don't know.
Because he's a wide receiver,
mm-hmm.
but he's one of those gimmick plays. I mean, bubble screen. That's a bubble screen guy all day.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Because back in the day, it's like, well, Ohio State's Big Ten, and Big Ten is slow, big and slow. And SEC and everybody else is fast. But in the NIL period that we have now, everybody's fast.
Yeah, so and Ohio State is a wide receiver factory. My goodness, they crank them out every year. And that freshman they have, man, he's great.
Smith,
he's great.
Yeah, he's a man child.
Yeah,
so that'll be interesting. But if they can block, this just sounds obvious, right? But if they can, well, they got good running backs too. But if they can, the battle's going to be in the trenches, and that defensive front seven for Texas. If they can get penetration, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, because Ohio State has two good running backs. So it's definitely going to be won or lost in the trenches.
All right, Q. Well, thanks for jumping on right after this, or right after the Notre Dame defeat, or right after Notre Dame win over Georgia. And we'll see what happens here within the next week or two, and then we'll get back together and talk about the national championship. I didn't even give you mine. I obviously I would like for Texas to win, and I think they still can, but we'll know what Texas team shows up after the first 6 minutes, I'll say. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's if I had to put money, it might be Ohio State. Ohio State and God, because they know the other teams. It's like that. It's like a rivalry. You have three of these teams are basically rivalries with each other. So it's hard to tell. But I think Ohio State's probably going to win it all, which will be good for Ryan Day. Not that I'm a fan of theirs, but everyone wants him fired because he can't beat Michigan.
Right.
So.
I actually saw that guy smile in that game. I didn't even know he knew how to smile.
Right. But, all right, Q. We'll do it again.
Right. Thanks a lot, Jay.
Later. Hard Parking Podcast. A little bit of cars, and so much more, available anywhere you get your podcast, or check it out at hardparkingpod.com.